Hello and welcome. If you're watching this, it means you're ready to take a really brave, powerful step toward getting your life back from PTSD. Think of this as your personal guide to prolonged exposure. It's a program that's been proven to work, and it's all about helping you process those tough memories and situations, not by running from them, but by facing them in a safe, structured way. All right, let's get into it. So here's our plan. We've broken this down into 6 parts. We're going to start with the why behind it all, then we'll get into the tools you'll be using. After that, we'll walk through the actual exercises, lay out some key rules for success, and wrap up by talking about what to do if you feel stuck. It's your roadmap for this journey. Okay, first things first. Before we do anything, you need to understand why this works. Getting the logic behind this therapy is, well, it's the foundation for everything else. So let's talk about why facing what you've been avoiding is actually the key to healing. So here's the central idea. PTSD isn't just about the trauma itself. It's really about what happens after. The condition is basically kept alive by avoidance. See, every time you dodge a person, place, or memory that reminds you of what happened, you get this little hit of relief. But that's the trap. That relief accidentally teaches your brain that avoiding things is what's keeping you safe. And that just keeps the fear cycle spinning and prevents you from truly learning that you're okay now. So how do we break that cycle? It's actually a pretty simple 3-step process. First, we're going to intentionally bring up the fear memory, but we do it in a totally controlled and safe environment. Second, and this is so important, you stay with those feelings long enough for your brain to get a new message. The message is, this is just a memory, not the event, and I can handle this feeling. And finally, you just repeat this process. You do it until it gets easier and the distress goes down more quickly. And I really want you to let this sink in. The point of these exercises is not to feel relaxed. In fact, you're supposed to feel some distress. That's how you know it's working. The real goal here is learning. It's about building this deep, solid belief inside yourself that says, I can handle this, and that was then, it is not happening now. Okay, to do this work, we need a way to measure what you're experiencing. So let's move on. We're going to use a simple tool called the SUDS scale. Think of it as your own personal emotional thermometer. It's how we're going to track your distress and, more importantly, see your progress over time. So the SUDS scale is super straightforward. It's just a scale from 0 to 100. A 0 means you're totally calm, no big deal. 25 might feel like some mild jitters. 50 is more moderate, you definitely notice it, maybe your heart's beating a little faster. 75 is high distress, it feels pretty awful. And 100, that's the absolute worst distress you can possibly imagine. Now, you're going to be saying your SUDS number out loud at very specific times, right before you start an exercise, then every few minutes while you're doing it, and again right at the end. This isn't some kind of test. It's just a way for us to gather information, to see how your distress shifts, and to make sure you're staying connected to the process. You know what? Let's try it right now. Just for a second, close your eyes, and think of something that's just a little bit stressful, maybe running late for something. Now, check in with yourself. What number between 0 and 100 fits how you feel? When you have it, just say the number out loud. And as you use this tool, just remember a few things. First, there's no right or wrong answer. Whatever number you say is the right one, as long as it's honest. Also, and this is a big one, it's totally normal for your SUDS number to go up at the beginning of an exercise. Actually, that's a good sign. It means you're engaging with the memory. The important part is that you stay with it long enough to feel it come back down. All right, now that you've got the SUDS scale down, let's talk about the first of the 2 big exercises. It's called imaginal exposure, which is just a structured way of revisiting traumatic memories in your mind in a safe and deliberate way so you can finally process them. Getting set up for this is easy. First, you'll pick just one traumatic memory to work on. You want to pick one that's still upsetting, but maybe not the absolute #1 hardest thing on your list. Give yourself a win to start. Then, find a private spot where you won't be bothered and set a timer for about 30 to 45 minutes. And last, get your phone out and open up the voice recorder app. Okay, here's the main instruction for the exercise itself. You're going to tell the story of the memory out loud. But, and this is key, you have to do it in the first person and in the present tense, like it's happening right now. So instead of saying, I walked into the room, you'd say, I am walking into the room. You want to pack in as much detail as you can. What you see, hear, smell, feel, that's what really helps your brain activate the memory so it can be reprocessed. So while you're telling the story, there are a few ground rules. You've got to stick with that one memory the whole time. Fight that urge to distract yourself. And if your distress level spikes, that's your signal to keep going, not to stop. When you get to the hardest part, we call it the hot spot. I want you to stay there. Describe it over and over and over. And of course, don't forget to say your SUDS number out loud every couple of minutes. Now for the homework. After your session, you're going to listen to that recording once a day. And it's so important that you give it your complete, undivided attention. No doing the dishes, no scrolling on your phone, just listen. And as you're listening, keep tracking your SUDS. This daily repetition is what really helps the brain file the memory away properly and takes away its power. Okay, let's switch gears to the next big piece. Once you've started working with the memory, it's time to take those skills out into the real world. This is called in vivo exposure. It's all about slowly and on purpose, starting to do the things and go to the places that you've been avoiding.
The first thing you'll do here is create your own personal roadmap, which we call a fear hierarchy. You'll literally just make a list of everything you've been avoiding. Then, next to each thing on the list, you'll guess what your SUDS rating would be if you did it. And finally, you'll rearrange that list, from the easiest thing at the bottom to the hardest thing at the top.
Here's a quick example of what one of these hierarchies might look like. See how it's just a simple ranked list. Each situation is tied to a specific distress reading. This is what lets us tackle things one step at a time, so you're always challenging yourself, but you're never completely overwhelmed. Now, where do you start? This is crucial. You're not going to jump in at the deep end and tackle the hardest thing on your list. Nope. You're going to start right in the middle, with something you rated between a 40 and a 60. This is the sweet spot. It's tough enough to force new learning, but it's also manageable enough that you can succeed and build up some real confidence. So when you actually go out and do one of these real-world exposures, the rules are very clear. You pick your item, and you plan to stay in that situation for about 45 to 60 minutes, or at least until your SUDS number drops by about half. And here's the deal breaker. You absolutely cannot use any safety behaviors. No calling a friend for reassurance, no distracting yourself on your phone, no bailing as soon as you feel anxious. You have to stay. Then, you repeat that same exposure every day until it gets way easier. Wow, okay, we've gone over a lot. So let's take a moment and just boil all of this down into a few super simple, essential rules. You can think of these as the core principles that make this whole thing work. These are your keys to success. Here they are. Number 1, approach, don't avoid. That's the name of the game. 2, stay long enough. If you leave too early, you just teach yourself to be afraid. 3, repeat it often. Repetition is what rewires your brain. 4, your focus should be on learning that you can tolerate the feeling. And 5, which we can't say enough, the goal is learning. Feeling less anxious is a wonderful side effect of that learning, but it's not the main goal itself. And finally, let's talk about what happens when you hit a wall, because it's totally normal to feel stuck sometimes. The trick is to see these moments not as a sign of failure, but just as a signal that it's time to learn something new. This gives you some really practical advice. If you feel like your distress just isn't budging, the answer is almost always more time and more repetition. If you feel kind of numb or disconnected during the memory work, try slowing the story way down and adding in more little details, sights, sounds, smells. And what if it feels like things are getting worse when you first start? Take a deep breath. That's actually a great sign. It's proof that you are successfully activating the fear memory. And that is the very first step you have to take to change it. It means the process is working. It means you are on your way to taking your life back.